Welcome, everybody, to another episode of SoulFull Sessions, a captivating conversation today with Ed Stern. We are going to be talking about mindful men with this Mindful Men series. We're also going to be talking about his latest passion project and his journey. And that's a big word we're going to be touching on quite a bit in this podcast episode. Just a little bit about Ed before I have him officially on the show. Ed Stern has always sought to create environments where people can be their best selves and be empowered to travel the journey they choose. There's that journey word again. This trait showed up in the advertising agency he founded and led for 21 years and in the roles as dad, husband, and friend. Ed is an ICF certified coach, has an MS in management and leadership, and is currently passionate about and inspired by his latest project, JourneyTalk. He explores his best self when focused on others, listening, being curious, and supporting people in their work and lives. I love that. When not coaching, running leadership workshops, hosting 0 to 60 road trips, or working on JourneyTalk, Ed enjoys running in the woods or climbing. Now, this is my little fun spin to his bio, and I'm unveiling this for the first time right now on the show with Ed. Ed is a Sagittarius sun, a Capricorn moon, and Pisces rising. And he is known for saying, "We'll figure it out." I mean, simple words, yet so powerful, and likely very supportive with your client work, Ed. You can learn more about Ed and his journey at www.JourneyTalk.community. And once you're there, you can join his membership and learn about his projects, of which there are quite a few, and his small retreat road trips, 0 to 60 road trips. And we'll be talking about that a little bit more. So welcome, Ed.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
I can't wait to hear about that astrology material.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about it right now. So did you know what your sun sign was? Most people know that they're, you were a Sagittarius. Did you?
That's about as far as it goes. Yes. Okay. I know I'm Sagittarius. Okay. Yeah.
So do you know what that means?
Do not.
Okay. So Sagittarius is a fire sign. And the symbol for it is an arrow or an archer. So it's like when you hone in on something and you are ready to go, you're going to shoot your arrow and you're going to hit your target. Like you're going to make it happen. It's like I said, it's fiery, it's masculine. So there's a lot of go get 'em tiger sort of energy with Sagittarius as your sun. And your sun is your personality. It's how you present yourself in the world. Now, the listeners on the podcast don't see Ed, but Ed and I are talking on video here online. And before we started recording, I was saying to Ed, we were talking about this indirectly. And if you see him, he is this super chill guy. He's got a bike and a guitar behind him. He's hey, what's up? Just that kind of guy. But underneath it all, I mean, working in, the public relations sector and having your own agency for 20 plus years, you have to have that drive. You have to have that ambition and that really get in there and move forward sort of energy. So it'll be interesting as we have this conversation, and part of this series is talking with men of different age groups as far as how your life has shifted and changed. So this is really, really so perfect. Okay. And then Capricorn moon. So your moon sign is about your inner world. It's that relationship you have with yourself, emotions. It's also the relationship that you have or had with your mother. So there are a lot of clues with your moon sign as it relates to your mother and that softer feminine part of you. So the sun is more masculine and the moon is more feminine. Mm-hmm. Capricorn is an earth sign. So it's a feminine sign, but it's also a very steadfast sign. Imagine it's like a mountain goat climbing up a mountain. It just keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going. There's this, strength and reliability to this particular sign. And then you have a Pisces rising. And your rising sign, which is also known as your ascendant, what you are ascending into, stepping into in this lifetime. And your rising sign is Pisces, which is a water sign. Again, another feminine sign. And it's fascinating to me. And Pisces is a very sensitive, emotional sign. It's really tuning into those really the deeper parts of yourself. The symbol for Pisces is a fish. So it's like kind of diving deep into the emotional waters of who you are and really getting a deeper understanding about yourself in that way, and being able to express that and be comfortable in that place within yourself. So how does that feel? Like when I'm describing this to you, how are you taking that in?
You got me.
Okay.
You know, I mean, a lot of that really fits. And we'll talk about that, you know, similar to the fire sign and you shoot your arrow and you go for it. And one of the other sayings I have for myself is measure once, cut twice. All right. I'm not always I see something and I do it. And then after I find out, oh, that's not what I should have done. You know, I go and change versus let me measure twice before I cut. So it kind of fits with see the target, go for the target. And all three of those, I wasn't aware of the moon sign and the rising sign, and that's pretty fascinating. And I believe they fit as well. Well,
we'll maybe touch back in on that as we have our conversation today. And what's really cool is that, you know, there are also all of the planets are represented in your natal chart, and each of the planets has a different message or energy or aspect in your life. The day of this recording, I actually recorded a short video on social media and my blog about Mercury. So while Ed and I are recording, Mercury went into retrograde yesterday. So I've been finding, and this is for me, you know, it affects everyone differently, but for me, Mercury has everything to do with communication, travel, technology. So back up your stuff, save as you go when you're on your computer. If you're traveling anywhere, you have you take public transportation. Be prepared for delays, snafu. When it comes to communication, writing, speaking, I've been having trouble with words. So it's like, oh, geez, when I saw that Mercury was in retrograde the day before we're recording this, I was like, well, we'll just go with the flow. So it's just interesting, you know, to see where each of the planets are in your chart and how they affect you as a person. And when the planets are moving in the sky each day, they're going to be pushing on each of us collectively, but also individually based on where that particular planet was in our star chart when we were born. So it's something that you could I get completely like geeked out over. I like analyze it and I look at it. It's a little bit of the Virgo in me. I mean, that's a small part of my astrological makeup, but it's very analytical and very much.
So do you look at it and say, okay, this is a day for me to do this? So if I had studied my chart, I would have said, you know what, this is not a good day to do a podcast. You know, Amaya is not going to get the best part of it. I'm going to postpone it. And do you know what I mean? Do you look at it in that way?
That's a great question. This is so funny. Like you're asking me questions on the podcast. This is great. I love this. So yes, I do. However, for me, I can get overwhelmed by looking at too much. I have a teacher that is awesome, and she can like kind of hone it down to a manageable amount of information. My big benchmark for me is the moon cycle. So the moon shifts every 2.5 days into a different constellation. I know which constellations are good for me to work with clients, good for me to communicate, and not so good. So I avoid certain days, and there's only 2 a month, so it's pretty easy to do. And you know, sometimes they fall on a weekend, so that's great. Where I really just kind of go within, work on other things where I'm not communicating with someone else in a way that may be detrimental, or they may not receive it in the way is intended. To me, it's kind of an integrity thing. Not kind of, it is an integrity thing, where if I cannot bring my best self to the table, then I'm likely not going to be at the table. So, but that's just me. I mean, and I have that knowledge, so I'm utilizing it, but if you don't have it, you can still go with your gut instinct. Go, I don't know. I'm not
feeling it.
There's something there.
And
you know, and hopefully the person that you're expressing this to is understanding and respects and receives that. And like, I'm not dissing you. I'm just saying I can't be my best self for
Totally
you.
hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Thank you.
So let's jump ahead a little bit to, well, let me ask you this first. So this is a question that I ask all of my SoulFull Sessions guests. Can you tell the listeners about a recent experience? And if you don't have a recent one, that's okay. An experience in general that lit you up when you just knew in your like heart, soul, gut, just, you knew it was your soul talking to you.
Am I allowed to say that you shared that question with me ahead of time? So
Sure.
I actually thought about it. Well, what's interesting is you shared, you shared it with me. And just now when you said it could have been in the past, it changed for me because I was mostly thinking present. I was mostly thinking what recently has lit me up. And
Well,
it's interesting. It's interesting because you were kind of, when you were representing me as looking calm and whatever, and underneath not so calm is pretty perfect, right? And but what I've noticed, and maybe it's 6 decades on the planet or something like that, but what I've noticed is I don't seem to get too high or too low. I tend to be, here's where I am, and it's not as much a roller coaster. We have this thing, I've got my niece, everybody around the table always has with their kids, like, what's the best part of the day? What's the worst part of the day? That sort of thing. And they've got this thing called high, low, boom. Okay. So high is best part of the day. Low is not so great part of the day. And boom is, what was that thing that you could say that lit you up? Right. And I've been doing that with Terry, my girlfriend. And when she says, what was your boom? I'm like, I don't have a boom. I'm trying to find, and booms are really cool. So here's what I would say. My answer for now is and it's funny because being lit up doesn't always have to be a positive. Okay. It could be that thing just really lit me up, like we take it as what a cool thing. I'm passionate. And passionate doesn't necessarily mean, kind of like the word fulfilling, doesn't mean that it's all good all the time. I would say there are a couple of things that have lit me up pretty well the last few weeks. One is witnessing America out in the streets, watching the response of especially the young generation protesting and speaking up for what is really important in our world. That's given me some faith and hope and I've enjoyed seeing it, and you're going to have to say enough, Ed, get back to the question. Okay. Because part of that is in being lit up there, a lot of us, we've thought about what's our role in that, what's my role in that? So maybe a few decades ago, I would have been in the streets too, but I'm watching that and I'm saying, you know what, that's where they need to be right now. And where I need to be is supporting them in the background and doing my thing. So that has lit me up, just seeing how people have come together in that regard. And then the same, a little bit similar. I have a couple of granddaughters. One is 4.5. The other she'll be 2 in October. And they live nearby, but we've only been doing drive-bys. My daughter's pretty careful in the day and age of Corona. But seeing them and interacting with them and hearing who they are, I think I get lit up by when I think about hope for the future and possibility. Like it just, that lights me up. So they're kind of connected, seeing even at a time, and obviously this is very subjective. We all have our own opinions about what's going on, but seeing a really difficult, challenging time for our country and our world, seeing that hope lights me up. Now, I will say that over the past have absolutely been things that have lit me up. When I've started a company, when I see what I want next, like you said, when I achieve some athletic thing, lights me up. When you meet the right person, lights you up. And it kind of goes, and then I'll stop it. It kind of goes with, I have this theory that if we're lucky enough to live a long enough life, out of the millions of moments that happen to us, we only remember a few handfuls, like we were there. Like you can pick out that time, and they're pretty random. It's not necessarily when I got married or when my child was born, or and I could go on for our entire time together and say, yeah, that one right there, that one totally lit me up. And I think as we go through this conversation, I'll probably share more about those.
Yeah. They're like micro moments. I've talked about that in past podcasts, where, it's seemingly it's just this micro moment in time where everything just lines up and you are like, wow. And it's likely, it isn't those big grand moments all the time. They're usually just these very simple moments. I think it was maybe a couple months ago, I shared a story about, this was when I was married at the time, a few years ago, and I had all 4 of my kids and my not anymore husband, but he was my husband then. And we were all in the same room together. At that time, I think we had a couple of kids in college, and, everyone's running around in a million directions. And we were all sitting in the family room watching a movie. There might have been 1 or 2 of the kids on their phones, as you could imagine, but mostly everyone was present. And we were all there. And I just remember feeling so full and so happy and blissful, and just the sense of peace and contentment that I'm like, I just closed my eyes and I just soaked it in. And it was a very simple moment, very simple moment.
So you having said that just remind me of one that I actually get the chills about a little bit now, that happened. It was Thanksgiving this past year. So Thanksgiving 2019. And it was one of those times where all the perfect storm, in a good way, all these things came together. So my wife passed away 11 years ago. And when we were together, we would often do Thanksgiving when it wasn't down here, Maryland, with my family. Would go up to New York with her family, and there would be 50 to 70 people in this one person's house who could fit 50 or 70 people, and so it was cousins and 3 or 4 generations. And we did that ever since my kids were first, born. So we did that for 30 years, 30 plus years. And when she passed away 11 years ago, we stopped going. Okay. But I didn't stop being in touch with some of those people, like her side of the family, just good people. And every year, Steve, who he and his wife would set this up, would send an invitation, this might be the year Ed comes, and so this year it was like, you know what? And I apologize for using the stars aligned to somebody who really knows what that means. Okay, but,
they may happen.
The stars aligned, and it was like, you know what, we're going. And so it was myself, Terry, my girlfriend, my daughter, who has 2 little daughters, her husband, and my son. And we all are able to attend, and we walk in this home, and it was a moment in time of being fully embraced by 50 people who you hadn't seen in about a decade. And boy, did that light us all up. And I think it went both ways. I think that for those people, it was this is, and I don't know that I'd call it a completion. It was sort of a reattachment in a way to that. But for me, it was, all right, I can die now. This is good. These people know these people, and I, and it's sort of like, just let me go in a corner and watch and not have to say anything now. So that reminded me of that for a moment in time, and probably like your family, this is a family that is always talking, and it just got quiet, and it just got, and so thank you for letting me remember that one.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad that
it was good.
Sparked that in you. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, that somewhat, indirectly leads me to my next question, which is, taking those moments in time, being mindful about what's occurring around you, and being present and absorbing it and integrating it and feeling that sense of gratitude. So, that the word mindful and mindfulness is tossed around constantly, and everybody has different thoughts and opinions and experiences with the word. So Ed, what does the word mindful, or what does mindfulness mean to you?
Yeah, thanks. When I think about mindfulness, the word that comes to me is having the ability to pause. And so I actually think there's two kinds of mindfulness. One is where we're actually paying attention to being mindful. Okay. And that's where I think of emotional intelligence and how to, and the tricks which are actually true biologically of let me count to 10, let me breathe, let me take a drink, let me let my, that stimulus go from my fight or flight to my logical brain. So to actually be able to pause for me is a moment of mindfulness before I react. I always tell my kids, you can't control what other people say or do. You can control what you say or do. And yeah, I am certainly not perfect at this, like having blurted many things or, reacted when I didn't want to. But I think when I can be mindful, I'm going to pause, and I'm going to, the saying of think fast, speak slow. I'm going to think about this before I react. So there's a mindful aspect that I try to practice of pause, let that go in. You were just triggered. What does it mean? No emotion is bad, but the reaction could. So for me, that's one kind of mindfulness. And that also goes with, and I think there's a lot of mindfulness that's connected to being grateful and being thoughtful and being thankful when you get up every day, just having that. I could work on that. Okay. I forget how grateful I should be sometimes. More on that later. The other kind of mindfulness, I think, is when we don't, is actually what I would call natural mindfulness, when we don't even realize we're just in a moment. Like time passes and it's 5 minutes later and I don't even remember what I was just doing. And I find that really, I find that rare. And when it happens, you don't know it when you're in it because you're in it. But it's truly, truly being present in a way that I don't think we can decide to be that way. Okay. We can be present. I'm looking, I'm paying attention. But when that happens, it's just like you have no control over it, and somehow it happens. And that I think about one episode that's kind of funny because it's something I almost never do. But a few years ago, my daughter's husband, they like to fish. Okay. So I am not never did it. I grew up playing, my dad played stickball in the Bronx. So I'm not a water guy for the most part. But I went with them. And I went, and it's a kind of fishing where you stand in a river and you just cast and you reel it in and you cast. And if you catch something, you let it go. And I literally remember 4 hours later saying, where was I? I was so, probably because a lot of it was beginner's mind of I'd never done it. So I, try not to stab myself with too many lures, and not kill the fish when I was returning it to the, so I was probably really focused on what it was, but it reminded me of when those moments happen of true mindfulness. To me is when I didn't even know I was there. And so I love when that happens. Okay. I love to reflect and say, wow, that was such a moment because something was really perfect about it. Whatever it was, something was perfect about it. And then the other part of it is I try to train myself, which is more about me being mindful around other people and my impact. And maybe on my own decisions for myself, I want to be thoughtful and mindful, but particularly in a social situation, let me be mindful of my surroundings, of the situation, of who's here, of what my role is.
Yeah, that's a really great, very insightful answer taken from two different perspectives of the same thing. I mean, it's almost like a duality in a sense, which is such a huge thing. I mean, this is a question that I had shared with Ed prior to the show, and I wasn't even sure exactly how I wanted to phrase it, I kind of sent it to him as like, this is the working version of this question, but it's about the duality of us as human beings. The fact that we have masculine and feminine qualities. I mean, that's pretty much expressed in your astrology. You know, there's masculine and feminine aspects in your charts, in who you are. You know, each element is represented. And some based on your astrology, some elements may be heavier than others. You might have more planets in masculine constellations. You might have more in feminine. You may be missing one of the 4 elements altogether. And that has a huge impact on how you present yourself to the world, how present you are, may or may not be able to be in those moments. And, you know, the masculine and feminine part, the duality of that within us has fascinated me because as a woman, I always, you know, I dress like a girl. I've never been like a tomboy kind of person. I'm not very athletic. It's just not my jam. Never has been. So I always thought of myself as fairly feminine. Well, in the past maybe 5-6 years or so, particularly when my marriage was in trouble, I was out with a girlfriend. I'll never forget this. And we had gone to the spa, we had a massage, we were relaxed, we were having a glass of wine we were at a hotel, and we were having a glass of wine and lunch at the bar, and we were talking, and I don't even know how it came up. And she said, and I said something about being feminine, and she said, "No, you're not." And she was like, she thought this was a riot. I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "You are not feminine." She was like, "You are masculine all the way. When you want to get something done, you're going to get that shit done. No one's standing in your way. You're take no prisoners. You're just like, we're doing it." And she was like, "You take charge. You're a lead." And I'm like, what? No, I mean, I thought she was off her rocker. I'm like, "I'm cutting you off. No more wine for you." Like, what the heck?
Right. How dare you?
Right. But then I thought about it. I really reflected on that. And I looked at myself from different angles and realized, wow, I do have a lot of masculine qualities that I never noticed. Okay. So
let me ask you a question about that, because what part of that is societal and what part of that is how we're, you know,
made
the bigger picture, the bigger picture of the earth and the stars and the planet. So you could argue that idea that, oh, you're masculine because you're direct and you get it done, could be a societal, that's what men do, versus that's actually what men do. Do you know what I mean? So
yes. So that is so I'm like thrilled to pieces that you brought up that distinction. So yes, there are masculine planets that are more action oriented. Like it is more like, I want to say aggressive, but I don't mean necessarily negatively. It's like, it's just like action, like we're going to get this done. Where the more feminine planets are more, you know, internal. So masculine is more external, feminine is more internal. And there are planets that are masculine. So for me in particular, I have Mars is really close to my sun in a fire sign. So I am like, that makes perfect sense. You know, I am going to be like, I see something needs to get done, I'm going to do it. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to be in charge of it because I'm going to make sure it gets done. If I will call people in to assist and to help, but no one's going to be telling me how we're going to do it. And so that's likely the reason why my not anymore husband is not my husband anymore, because he probably didn't love that much, you know? So, you know, but it definitely has worked to my advantage in different aspects of my life. But yeah, so we're all dual in nature as far as, you know, you can be super masculine and not show your emotions in that way, in that external part of you. But meanwhile, it's still there. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Awesome. There is that internal aspect to you as well. So, and having a balance between the two within yourself. And then if, you know, you brought up societally, yes, there's absolutely a societal standard, a cultural standard of men don't cry. Men don't express their emotions. You know, if women do cry, they're showing their weakness as well, you know, and, you know, in the workplace, I see this quite a lot. And when I didn't work in a corporate setting, I did the stay-at-home mom gig, which I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. when my kids were growing up. But when I was the president of my HOA for almost 10 years, and my board members were awesome, but I pretty much just did it all myself as a the Mars in me was coming out. And we were having a really big issue with cut through traffic in our neighborhood, people going 60 miles an hour through our neighborhood, not stopping at stop signs. Our bus stop had to be shifted because kids were getting harassed, and some injuries were likely to occur. It was a whole big thing. Had to deal with the sheriff's department, with the county and the town, and VDOT and the board of I mean, you name it. I was in front of these people and having to express myself and be in this environment where there were a couple of women, but mostly men. And the women that were involved, I would say the majority of them, I can think of one in particular who wasn't this way, were very aggressive. They were like just coming at you. And they had no empathy whatsoever for our children or anything else. So I in that moment recognized, wow, like this is a really interesting dynamic, and there wasn't much of that feminine quality in that environment at all.
Right.
At all. It was really very like I said, aggressive, and almost attacking the I don't want to say victim, because it wasn't like that. It was more like the underdog, it had a very did not feel good. I did not enjoy any of those meetings. And what I find really interesting now, with the Me Too movement, for example, and as women have been more on the rise, like that hasn't been talked about quite as much in the recent past, because there have been really gigantic things at play that have overshadowed that a bit. But it really, to me, I would love to see more of a balance as far as perception and expression of the masculine and feminine within ourselves and within society as a whole. I started something called the Sacred Sisterhood Movement, which I'm still working on, and there are a lot of moving parts and a lot going on there, but it's really about bringing women together in a way that we used to come together, where we would come together to support each other. Now I find there's a lot of women who feel like there's not enough of anything, and we're fighting with each other and we're tearing each other down. And then I'm not excluding men, because I feel like in some ways men have gotten a really bad rap. I don't know that some women are able to see how difficult it must be for men to navigate their role that they feel they have to step into as a man, because that's what society says you have to do. And, I think about holding in your emotions, not being able to express your feelings for decades on end.
Right.
Oh my gosh, like I can't imagine how much of a burden that would be for a man to do that. And, so the Sacred Sisterhood movement is really about women coming together, but it's also about embracing the men who get us, who support us, who can embrace that softer side of themselves while taking charge when they need to, just like us. Embrace that softer side of us and take charge when we need to. So it's about that balance between the two.
That's awesome.
Individually
awesome.
And collectively. So Ed, can you share maybe an experience that you've had with yourself as an individual? Maybe you were not able to express your emotions, and now as you've gotten older and you're more comfortable with yourself, is that easier for you or harder, or has that changed at all?
That's interesting. And you reminded me, I want to think about that personal experience, but you reminded me of a song. Do you know that singer-songwriter Dora Williams? So
no, I don't.
Check her out.
Okay.
Dora Williams, she has a song called When I Was a Boy. And the song is about her growing up as a tomboy, and climbing trees and riding her bike with her shirt off and doing all kinds of stuff, and then how society made her change, and now, there's some lines in it like, the clothes I buy aren't for me, they're for you to, to look at me and things like that. And so and how she's at a party and somebody has to walk her home because she can't walk home by herself. And when she was a boy, you didn't mess with her, and
Yeah.
so it's sort of how society had her not be that boy. And then at the end of the song, she tells the guy she's walking home with how you've won, look what you made me, and he's like, oh no. And the last part of the song is when I was a girl. And he would say, I would pick flowers with my mom and I would cry and I would do stuff. So check it out. When I was, when I was a boy, it just reminds me of exactly what you said, how we, how we're supposed to do that. It's, for me, there's something you said that sparked some moments for me. It's, when I, back in suburbia, where we raised our kids, and raising kids it took a village and you're all in it together. And then, certain weekend nights, all the parents would get together and party. Right. So, so get the kids asleep and all the parents get to party. And what I noticed is, for me, is when it came to a party, I found my way over to the women to join their discussions because they were just more fascinating. They were more interesting to me. And I know I was really biased because it's like, if I need to, and I can talk sports with the best of them. Like I love sport, but it's like the conversation with guys was either about the stock market or sports or not much else. And I was like, okay, I need something deeper than this, so I'd head over there and hang with that. Or, when kids got older, I'd then meander and talk to the young people because I just found them more interesting. But if this was outdoors and there was, let's play touch football or base, or there was a sport involved, then I'm like, bring it on. Let's go, guys. Like the competitive sort of nature of me came out. So it was almost like ridiculously obvious in those situations, quiet time, conversation. I'm hanging with the women, bring on some athletic competition. I'll go hang with the guys, And I think the question about expressing myself, it's a really fascinating one. And I struggle with that today. And I'm not so sure I don't know if it's about a masculine, feminine versus a fear of, what if I say this? Am I going to hurt somebody? Am I going to lose somebody? Is something going to change? It's more, I appreciate that you spoke of me as a confident human being in the beginning, but there are times I'm not as confident and I worry that what's going to happen if I, say this. So my expressiveness, it's just, I'm not even trying to answer that question. It could be a really long answer. There are days I will be incredibly expressive. I can lead, I can take charge, I can do it. And there are days when it's like, you know what, I actually don't want to be expressive right now. I'm gonna sit back. And I think for me, it's probably more about, and we can talk about that when I get to the business aspect or whatever, but that sense of, do I trust the environment? Is this a safe place to be who I am? It can be scary because I can share too much. I would say, in my long-winded answer to that question, is it's gotten easier for me to be expressive. Part of that is recognizing, getting really clear with the moments in my life when I did the right thing and the moments in my life when I didn't do the right thing, and sort of coming to terms with that, and that kind of cliched phrase of forgiving yourself, which allowed me to, I believe, share more openly because it's almost not personal anymore. It's just something that happened. So I feel fortunate, like when you were talking about the moon part of me, whether it was how my parents raised me, the people I was around, even the guy role models, like my guy role models in college were very expressive, great conversations. Of course, you just put on Pink Floyd and smoke a joint and everybody's having a conversation. But I've been fortunate, I think, to be, when I was raised, in almost every situation I've been in, it's never really been, here's what the guys do and here's what the girls do. It always seems to be this is the environment. So I like to think I learned both sides, and I learned it, and I believe that, yeah, we both have it. So that's, I'll stop there.
Well, so something you mentioned about some days you feel it, some days you don't. That's back to the moon cycles again. It's something that my teacher calls a moon mood. So depending on the moon cycle, that particular period of time, you may really be in that soft place and you can express yourself. And that, when you talk about your, a fear of hurting someone or making sure it's a safe environment, like that all stems from a deep inner wound that you may or may not even be aware of. And it's that, that sense of survival in a way where,
Got it.
In times when we really didn't have the language to communicate, we'd have to form a community, and you would have to be part of that community to live, to survive. And if you said or did something that was deemed bad, quote unquote, by the community, and they ousted you, or you were pushed away and no longer part, you would likely perish. And so there's this really deep, innate, visceral fear of rejection that we all have. I mean, you can likely, most of us can remember the first rejection in love that we had, the first rejection in like our professional or academic life. I mean, it stings, it hurts, and some of us have bigger wounds around rejection, and so you avoid it at all costs. And one of the coping mechanisms to avoid it is just to kind of just be quiet, internalize it, just let it all, like, oh, whatever. Or the flip side of that is then when you can't take it anymore, you're going to explode, and there's going to be this like deep rage and anger that comes out over something likely very small, but it's this built up energy behind it. I mean, I see that over and over and over again with my clients and people that I know, where they just keep it in and keep it in. So if we can find a way to embrace the masculine and feminine qualities, have a balance between the two, I think there would be a peace and harmony within ourselves that we would likely ripple out to the people around us, and then to them, and then, as a collective, not just here in the United States, but like beyond, like having a deeper understanding about who we are. And I don't know, compassion, kindness, there's two big words that I mean, the name of my business is Karmic Kindness, for goodness sake. So it's clearly a big part of me. So makes a big difference. And I think men, if they do express kindness or show it in some way, it is seen as a bit of a weakness instead of as an asset, to be able to be comfortable in who you are enough to show that.
I think it's changing.
Yes.
I think actually social media is part of that. So when you see a JJ Watt or a known sports dude or entertainer or somebody like that showing that kinder side, it tells hopefully all those young boys you can do that, and hopefully the other way around. When you see strong women being strong not in an aggressive, but just in an intelligent, I can do this way, gives that to women. So I think what that opens up is we're no longer only at the mercy of our teachers and our parents and our immediate role models. We can see what the rest of the world is doing, and choose or see what's possible. So I agree. I think when we can access both of those,
it's very helpful.
It's going to be
the cool thing too. So this bringing kind of women and men together of diverse backgrounds and stories, and everyone's coming. We're all humans. We're all soul beings on fundamental level, but we all have our own experiences, and we're all here to learn and grow in different ways. And engaging with one another is a really great way to do that, just to open up ourselves and maybe shine a light on aspects of ourselves that we didn't realize needed some attention. And I think with your work with Journey Talk, that's a beautiful platform for those conversations, and for, you were talking about a safe space to share.
Right.
It is a safe space for people to share. And I love that you're so welcoming to everyone, age, race, gender, just all sorts of different career paths, all of that. I think it's great. So would you mind sharing a bit more about Journey Talk, your vision of it? And I know there's a membership
Yeah,
part aspect
going on right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, you got some really fun things happening right now. So tell us all about it, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. Journey Talk, excuse me, it feels, I've spoken about it like it feels like where culmination is not the right word, because I hope there's still more time, but it feels where my 64 years of life have landed me. I remember this drawing, when I was first job out of college. I worked in Manhattan. I worked in an ad agency, and I was stuck in, I knew right away this was not the right job. I was just punching numbers, and it wasn't the excitement that I thought advertising was supposed to be, So I took some courses downtown at a school called the School of Visual Arts in Lower Manhattan. And I remember, the only thing I remember there was this instructor drawing this giant spiral on the board. And he said, everything you do in your whole life leads to where you are now. I have no idea what that had to do with School of Visual Arts. Okay. But I have not, it so struck me over the last year as I've been developing this Journey Talk thing. I think I've been searching for a way for a few years to tie it all together. Okay. And if I start getting long here, just give me a slice across the neck or something, because it is so for 21 years, I had an ad agency, and I was a creative director, writer. And my real intention from the beginning was, yes, I wanted to do great creative and get into all of that, but it was really to build a place where people wanted to be. Okay. And even before there was this movement towards values and towards organizational development, like we've had over the last couple of decades, I really tried to build a safe space where people wanted to be. And for people who know that world, it's not easy, because there are fighting factions. The creatives don't like the account people, and the account people don't like, so nobody by nature is going to get along. Okay. So for 21 years, I did my best to create an environment like that. And I would say for the majority of it, we did really well. And then I would also say that it ended badly. Okay. So this kind of goes with what you were saying about the explosion, when you hold it in or whatever. I'm not so sure that's what was happening, but I realized as I was coming to the end of that ride for me, that I didn't love what I was doing anymore. And if you don't love what you're doing, you need to change. And also, you better not be in a leadership position, because it's going to show. And so there I was, leading a company, didn't love what I was doing. Okay. So when I found a way out, which is one of the regrets I still need to change in my life, if I hurt some people when I left, I didn't do it the right way. That's my vote on it. Okay. But when I left, part of my reason for leaving wasn't just, I need to get away from this, but I had discovered something kind of interesting as next, and that was the world of coaching. Okay. So while I still had my company, I became a certified coach. I started using it with my clients and with my people to try to broaden what we did. And so I next moved to, how do I use this coaching world in my next world to, again, create an environment where people want to be. And so I wrestled with that, and it was mostly one-on-one, and hadn't solved it yet. Okay. So then I would say for the last 5 years or so, it's been mostly individual work, teaching workshops, one-on-one, go to a company. So I haven't really been part of a team, and I've kind of missed that. So my next attempt was a few years ago and I apologize for getting political. I listen to all views, but I was not happy with how the election turned out a few years ago. And what I was seeing what was happening with people. So I came up with this organization, and I'm actually wearing this thing today. It's called Start with Decency.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I started this thing called Start with Decency as an organization. Like, this is what I'm going to get into, because it was, they shoot my arrow. Let me just go try it. Right. And I dove into Start with Decency as an organization, and something about it, you know, wasn't aligned. Couldn't figure it out. Couldn't figure out what it was. There was a little bit too much of righteousness in it, you know, like, I'm right, you're wrong. And I learned very early on that that's not how to win hearts and minds. Okay. To say you're wrong. So,
No one likes that.
I clearly understood that wasn't working. So what am I going to do? So Start with Decency kind of faded. I fell out of love with it, you know? And then, and I know this is getting long, but I'm getting to Journey Talk. Okay. Cause it was an evolution. Okay. So I then, the last couple of years, I had this idea that I'm going to open a coffee shop. Okay. Because I love coffee. And
I was not expecting that to be the next part of the story.
One of my favorite things to do is just go to coffee shops. I'm fortunate that I can walk to like 4 of them from where I live, you know, and they've been closed for the last 3 months, which is not fun. But there's something about coffee shops that I would sit there and I would just observe people. Yeah, I'd be on my computer, but I would observe people and say, people have some of the best conversations in coffee shops. And I think it's here where people dream. Okay. It's a cliched word, but I think people go to coffee shops and they dream of what they want to do, and they journal and they write notes and they imagine, you know, what they could be. And people are so busy in coffee shops working on themselves. And I get that some people are just there to drink coffee, but it feels, so there was something about, so my idea was going to be, I'm going to have this coffee shop, and it's reminding me, it's going to be in a way the opposite of what happens in coffee shops now. Because what usually happens in coffee shops now, especially for guys, if you look around, we've all got our laptops and our heads in our laptop, and nobody's actually talking to each other. Okay. We're all focused on the most important work on my laptop. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what you know, and there's a couple of offshoots. Some people are talking or studying together. So what I wanted to do was create a coffee shop where that actually is not allowed. Okay. Or you can do it in bits and pieces. Okay. You can get 10 minutes there. What this really is a place for conversation. Okay. So imagine those, you know, shared tables in Italian restaurants in Soho or something like that, you know, where you sit at a communal table and you have conversations. So I wanted to create this coffee shop where, and one of my, I was thinking about, what's the ad for this? It's like, instead of baristas, we have facilitators. Okay. And instead of, you know, so there's rules of engagement, you know, here's how you go up to a stranger and have a conversation. So this was built out of Start with Decency. It was built out of, we need to be able to talk to one another. Okay. We need to find a way to have different opinions and communicate, because we are not learning that. We're getting worse than better. And it's causing, forget political, it's causing divisions that are going to be really damaging for generations to come. So my role was, what can I do? It was like, I'm going to build a place where people learn how to talk to each other. And when they're not sure, we'll facilitate, we'll mediate, we'll help them. Okay. So I had this vision.
Well, and that's really cool, because that is the birthplace of your.
So that is the birthplace of it. So it started with a physical location. Okay. And then a couple of things came out of that. One was, what's my commitment to the finances behind a physical location? Okay. It would be, and it's not out of the question yet, but it would have been, you know, it would have been, okay, you've got to pay rent, you've got to hire people, you've got to get behind this. Everything you read is how these places fail more than they succeed. So had that thought in my head, which takes me to last spring, summer, when Journey Talk really started to happen. So come up to late winter last year, and I'm having dinner with a friend. And the question that stops me, okay, that when people ask me this question, it's like, when somebody says, Ed, what's stopping you? Okay. That question just stops me in my tracks, because it first showed up a few years ago. I was at a family gathering, and I was chatting with my son-in-law's brother who had just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro or Fuji. You know, I can't remember which one.
A big
And he
ass
said,
mountain.
big ass mountain. And he said, Ed, what's stopping you? And I was like, so like a week later, I signed up for a 2-week trip through Patagonia. You know, it's just like nothing is stopping me. So last year, sharing with this friend that I've had this dream for 50 years to ride a motorcycle around the country. Okay. It makes no sense. And she was like, what's stopping you? And I was like, damn.
So yeah, as soon as you heard that, you were like, damn it, now I'm going to have to do it.
Yeah. I was like, yeah. And what was stopping me mostly was I don't want to die on a highway, you know, with 2 little grandkids and 2 great kids. Like, what a stupid idea. And I was in a new relationship, and it's like, what a really stupid idea. Okay. But as soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, I'm so doing this. So
can I pause you for one
yeah,
second?
Yeah.
So when, you know, this is a big thing that I think is important for anyone, male or female. And I love that we're having this conversation. So I can ask you as a guy, in that moment when you, where did you feel it in your body, that moment when you're like, oh yeah, okay. It's like, this is going to happen. Cause you know, for me, and I think most women, it is this sense of an opening in the chest. Like, instead of like kind of going, and you're muted, by the way, Ed. So if you want to unmute yourself, it's this, you know, a lot of times if somebody shares something with an idea with us, that's like, oh, we feel like we can't do it. It's like too big. We kind of do this, like, we go within, we contract, but somebody then gives you this big idea and you feel this opening, this expansion of, oh, maybe. And it's like this chest opening, this heart opening, this like, you know, opening your arms wide to what may come. How did it feel to you? That's kind of my benchmark for it.
That's it. Yeah. Let me try to think of that moment. Or one.
Could I invite you to close your eyes and go back to the moment?
Yeah. It was more like a release.
Okay.
It was more like,
it was not
it was more like a release, and it was more of a, it was more of a release, because in the moment we're both good at and bad at already having a discussion. Like, okay, you've decided to do this. So I wasn't completely at peace, or I wasn't like, it was sort of like, it was like the pressure was off in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was a full body feeling of, gosh, can you be relaxed and excited at the same time? Because that's what I remember. There was an energy of, this is going to be amazing. And also there was this is going to be amazing. Yeah. So
there was a little apprehension too, because it's the unknown. You have no idea.
It's the unknown. And then for me, it was immediately all of those people who were going to say, are you insane? You know, so you immediately go from the irrational, this is amazing, to, oh, how am I going to go explain this now? You know, but and it's funny because one of the trainings I'm going to do through Journey Talk is how to handle that moment of when you decide to do something, and how do you go easy on yourself, especially in the beginning, you know? Yeah. So I would say physically, I felt a release, and I was also, you know, just, like, like you said, directed and early on for a Sagittarius, like I was like, okay, you know, what do you do here? So, and I can get into, if it matters later, that model of progressing from, I basically decided in November, and then I had 5 months to get ready mentally and physically for this trip. So, well,
and I feel like the trip in and of itself, like we could have a whole podcast just on that.
Oh my gosh.
All of the, you know, moments that you had where these insights came through, or realizations about different things, and the people that you met. And so so as much as I would love to talk about that.
Nope, we're not going there.
I feel like it would be like, seriously, it'd be like part 2 and 3 and 4 of the podcast. How though was that journey
Yeah.
so intimately tied to Journey Talk.
You're right. So I got to spend what I call 10,000 hours in a helmet. Basically, you're by yourself a lot. And that was really the trip, was a lot of, even though I talked to, it was a lot of by myself. And I didn't go to find myself. Like, I was pretty well found. I just went because I wanted, it was an existential, I wanted to do this, you know? And so on the trip, I was thinking about this coffee shop, and I was thinking about, what do I want to do with this? And how do I go from there? And when it started to change when I came back and I started having conversations with people about what this thing could be. And I had a couple of really helpful conversations with people who helped me figure this out. I don't even remember where the idea came to sort of be a virtual, you know, web-based program, which, as it turns out now, good thing, right? But
Absolutely.
you know, I don't remember where that came from. But I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Brendan, who lives here, smart young guy, you know, PhD engineer, brilliant dude, very fun. And I start talking about this, and I start telling him, I'm thinking about building this online community. And he's like, Ed, I've had enough of online communities. Can you just get people talking face to face? You know, that's what we need. We don't need another Facebook, is what he said. And I was like, that's fascinating. That's really interesting. So take that. And I've got all this stuff in my head that was swirling around from the trip. And I joke about coffee, but it was influential because people joke that actually I took more pictures of coffee cups on my trip than, like, you know, the Grand Tetons. You know, it was like, here's the coffee shop I'm in today, you know.
Dude, I have a coffee and cocktails little story thing on my Instagram profile, because I'm with you. Like,
awesome.
A good cup of coffee, there's nothing better. I actually forbid cappuccinos, but that's,
I love it. No, I hear you. Yeah. And so where the name and the idea really came together is I spent a weekend last October with Terry, my other half, and we went to, there's a place in Western Maryland called Deep Creek Lake. And it's basically, you go to rent a cabin and hike because there's pretty much nothing else to do. So we were walking through the woods, and somehow she said, I'm going to interview you for a podcast right now. Okay. And I've got to find these tapes. It's like the hidden tapes, you know, she started asking me about this thing I wanted to do. And like you're doing, you know, what I find when you speak out loud, you hear yourself say it, and it either fits or it doesn't fit. So I worked through a lot of what the idea for this was on that trip. And the idea, where the essence of the idea and the reason the motorcycle trip was important for me was, I believe that we all want to do certain things in our life, with our life, okay? Whether it's career, whether it's romance, whether it's travel, adventure, kids, that we have. And I wish I had a better word than dream. Okay, these dreams, because some people don't have dreams. You know, it's just a thing you're after. Like I talk about, what's that thing you're after? You know, and my voice changed, like, what's that thing you're after? I think we're all after these things, and so many times we don't do them. Okay, so many times something stops us, whether I can't do that. You know, how many people say I can't do that because, you know, and there are so many rational reasons why we can't. Okay, like my belief is we don't play that out enough. We don't really test our I can't do that hypothesis enough. And so we sell our dreams short, and that sounds really cliched, but we stop. Okay, we don't go after, we don't pursue whatever it is we want to pursue. And what I wanted to do was build a community where people support one another in going after the things they want to do. Okay, and this is really critical. You can get right to the edge and decide not to do it. That's okay. There is no judgment of you didn't do it. There wouldn't have been judgment. Oh, Ed didn't take the trip. Like, okay, so you didn't do it. You really didn't want to leave your grandkids without a grandfather. You know, like, you know, whatever. There are reasons you do things. My goal is to open up every door for someone so that they can explore this thing they want. Okay, Yeah, so my intention is to create a safe place where people can find support to do those things they want to do. Okay, and how we're doing that is several ways. The main focus right now are what I call coffee talks. Okay, so this is where we're now creating the world's biggest coffee shop without actually having a coffee shop. So the idea is we have calls throughout the week. Right now we have 3 calls every week. And this is a forum, and we usually lead with a topic. So there's a topic to discuss, and it's a forum for people to get on when they can. You don't have to attend all of them. You just do it when you can, and you find like-minded people. And what I mean by like-minded people is people open to discussion and conversation. You don't have to all agree on the same things. And actually, I hope we don't all agree on the same things, but the idea that you can have this conversation, okay? And through those conversations, people can challenge one another, they can coach one another, they can get ideas from one another, they can support one another in getting after that thing career-wise, work-wise, lifestyle-wise, whatever it is that they're trying to do. They can get that kind of support. They can throw questions out. I've been incredibly encouraged by how people handle this, and sort of the ability to have these conversations in an open way, and nobody takes over. And what I didn't expect when this started to go live was we would be in a virtual world, okay? Because suddenly this is the platform, okay? And a lot of people are zoomed out, like, oh, not another call. So, but the beauty of this is it's here if you want it. We'll be here if you want to get on. You don't have to. The vision, as far as the coffee talks part of it, and then I'll get to the other aspects, but the vision of the coffee talks aspects are, these will be available almost all week, and you can just choose the ones you want, okay, depending on the geography you are. There will be, for now, I'm facilitating a lot of them, but it will not be about Ed. There will be other facilitators who don't look like me, who, do different things in their life. So there will be a variety of topics, a variety of people, a variety of ideas and opinions and concepts and directions. So it's an hour, you get on. If you can only get on for a half hour, totally fine. And when we can do these in person again, that's going to be a big part of it. My idea is, at 11 o'clock in the morning, all over the country, there's a table with people doing a journey talk, and we'll find the technology to check in what's going on in Seattle, what's happening in Florida with Amalia, so that these conversations are happening all over. And the idea is, you get to grow your perspective, you get to ask questions. So there's the coffee aspect of it, okay? There's also a podcast aspect, okay, which I probably don't do them as well as Amalia, but there's a section on the website where I interview what I call regular people. It's sort of what Amalia is doing. Like, I'm not famous and I never will be, but I believe that every person, has something to say, and we have something to learn from every person. And every person in a way deserves their own memoir and their own story. So my goal is to just interview regular people, so you get to hear their story, okay? Or you get to be interviewed and you hear your story. So we have podcasts that make that happen. There is a part on the site where people post stories, okay? What I'm learning in the beginning right now is people mostly want to have conversations. Okay, so eventually that's going to be built out. The part that I'm really excited about is on JourneyTalk.community is this thing that we are calling road trips. Okay, so it's about your journey, right? It's about the journey and all the things that it's not the destination. It's, which a lot like my trip, it wasn't about a destination. It was just sort of experiencing it and doing it. So the road trips, what these are 4-week, what I call coaching intensives, okay, with a car load of no more than 6 people, okay? So it's a facilitator driver, myself or somebody else being the head coach, okay, and 4 people in the car, in the quote car together, okay, and we have a destination. Okay, we leave from a place and we have a destination. And the road trip, I mean, who doesn't remember their college road trip? Okay, it's you and 3 friends, and you're crammed in a car and figuring out who drives next. And you have one cassette tape that plays, and wasn't always the best of times. Like there were moments when, okay, let's not talk to each other, but you remember the special moments, like 3 o'clock in the morning and two people are asleep and you're chatting with the person next to you, and that's magic, and so what we're trying to create, what we're going to create is sort of that kind of a bond that you have with your fellow driver, with your fellow car people. And so our first offering is called the 0 to 60 road trip. Okay. And the 0 to 60 idea is really at the essence that I started with of Journey Talk, is what is it that you've been really wanting to do, but you can't get out of the driveway. You're just stuck, could be a big thing. I've got to leave my husband, or I've got to change my career. Could be a small thing. I want to start eating before, dinner before 7 o'clock at night. It can be whatever it is for you, or there's a conversation you need to have, or there's a class you want to take, or you've been meaning to paint the bedroom, whatever, so, but you've been stuck. Okay. And we get stuck for different reasons. We put it off. I'll put it off. I'll get to it. This road trip is designed to get you unstuck and to get you going. So there are group coaching conversations. There are one-on-one coaching conversations with myself. There's homework. There's a guided success path. So we're not just ephemerally talking for 4 weeks. You're going somewhere and you're going to be held accountable to it. And hopefully it's fun. And hopefully at the end of those 4 weeks, you've bonded with a few of those people that you stick with for a long time. And it's only 4 weeks. You don't have to devote a year, a semester, or whatever.
Yeah.
And my belief is that there's value in it for people who just say, you know what, I'm finally going to do this. And this gets you right there. And, it gets you out of the driveway, and it gets you 0 to 60. Quickly fast track going. Yeah. So the goal is, in the course of the next few years, we're going to grow membership. I'll stop, but the part that I wanted to make this a membership site for a few reasons. One is I think when you join something, you feel more accountable to it. You play more of a role in it. You participate more. So I want people who actually want to play. And it doesn't mean you have to talk all the time. You can get on a call and listen. Nobody has to talk. You can just mute yourself and hear the conversation. So it's not necessarily that kind of participation, but I want people who are involved and get on and do it and have that sense of, I want to live my best life. Okay. And I can live my best life while other people live their best life. It's not a quid pro. It's not a zero-sum game. Sorry. It's me or you. And if this is not the community for people, I get it. There's a lot of communities out there, I get that, but I want people to feel like there's some ownership in this. They have a part to play in it. And in a way, it's not for everybody. You can't just come on and post something and be an idiot. We're going to know who you are. And what I do know for sure, Amalia, is what I think of this right now, it's going to be way different in a year. My goal is absolutely get other voices. Like you talked about the diversity in it, and we're not there yet. I have a lot of work to do with diversity. I'm grateful and lucky that my partner is African-American, so I can tap into some of her people. I am grateful that I've got a really good connection with younger people, with my kids and other people that I've worked with. But the community is not nearly as diverse as it needs to be. So that's Journey Talk. I invite people to check it out, go on the site, tool around, see what's there. Even if you're not a member, what will be true is you can join 2 calls a month. Okay, you can join us for a couple of calls a month and see what it's like and say, this isn't for me, but I'll check it out once in a while. Or you can decide to become a member, which comes with other privileges that, are on the site. So I invite you to check it out, and see what it looks like. Join a ride, join one of our road trips. And if you do decide to play in it, I'd love to hear what you want out of it, because that's the beauty of this, is it's going to go, I don't even know where it's going to go. And will totally expand beyond anything I care about. Sorry if that took a long time, but
Well, I think,
yeah.
I think that for most folks that's somewhat helpful, because they may be looking for a community, but they're not totally sure, or maybe they have a sense of what they would like, but they can't find the community. So your openness to suggestion and kind of, you're in that molding phase of it. You're just getting started. So I would say cut yourself a break, that you don't have the diversity that you're looking for quite yet. And, having people come in and just experiment a bit and explore and see. And I think you're absolutely right. If you don't have skin in the game, the commitment is not quite as pronounced, it's,
right.
you're just
And
not.
I get it.
Yeah.
People are busy and you're going to choose. What I can say is this feels really good to me, Amaya. Like I get up every day, like this is a worthy cause. And I'll, every once in a while when, there were only 4 people on that call, which actually for the 4 people, it was a great call, but I'm like, why weren't there 20? So I'll, it's teaching me so much about the non-Sagittarius way of be patient,
Yes.
of sort of be patient. It's going to grow. It's, one person, because this is a worthy, important thing for right now. So thanks for letting me share about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in closing, I have kind of a 2-parter question for you. So, and this speaks to kind of the male and female ways of managing things and managing emotions and overwhelm and stress and anxiety, that sort of thing. So I talk a lot about different ways to manage stress, overwhelm, anxiety, uncertainty that we've been living in for quite some time on a totally different level than we did before the COVID pandemic. So as a guy with a few years under his belt, what if you could sum it up in like 1 or 2 strategies have you found have been really helpful for you in those times of stress, overwhelm, anxiety, fear of the unknown, that sort of vibe?
I could say it in 2 strategies. One is physical and one is emotional for me.
That'd be great.
So for me, physical activity, exercise is a really important way for me to get recentered and get calmer and lose some of that anxiety. So I'm fortunate that I am still able to run, and someone about a decade ago turned me on to trail running. So, it's running in the woods, and there's just, when I'm in overwhelm or stressed, and I can do that, I will head there. And the best time is when it's a light rain, because nobody else is there and it's just amazingly beautiful. So I will do that. I will, get on the rowing machine. I will take a bike ride. When I haven't been climbing lately because the gyms are closed and it's crowded outside. So one strategy is physical. The other is emotional, and it is about conversations, and it is about with people I trust. And I talk about, we have all got a small boat of people that those are your go-to people. And I'm really fortunate that my kids are 2 people who will help me calm down. They're amazing. I wish I had a whole podcast to talk about them. Okay. Because they are amazing human beings who teach me something all the time. My girlfriend teaches me something all the time, and I see a coach/therapist once a month. Okay. And whatever stigma is attached to that, I'm like, all right, you're lost, because you get to talk about yourself. And the person I go to is very coach-like. And I've been doing that for about 10 years, and it's a gift. you know, and so I get to have conversations with her. I get to talk to my small boat of people and actually have those conversations and get recentered and remember what's important, remember what my priorities are. And especially the physical part of it that's something, you know, when I get to an age where I can't do that, I'm going to have to think about what's my replacement for some of that, perhaps, you know, but those are my two strategies. And I'll often think back about everything else I've been through. And it's like, yeah, it's just another thing. What's that going to be?
Well, and the physical,
you know?
aspects that you're
Yeah.
talking about, movement, getting that moving that energy through, that's very masculine. And then the conversation and kind of tuning into yourself, expressing yourself, that's more of the feminine. So
I agree. I
yeah,
agree. And I think they're both critical. I think that they're both really important.
That's very cool. So so kind of on the coattails of that, you know, the final question that I usually ask is about rituals that you might have that really bring your soul online. And I think I'm making a big assumption, but I'm assuming, you know, the trail running might be one big one where, because you're connecting in with nature while you're also moving energy. There's like a lot happening there. So, you know, that movement piece for you, maybe that's where like insights come through.
I have places like that. I'd say running for sure. I would say washing dishes. I love to wash dishes. Okay. So, you know,
you want to move in? Come on over.
It'll be almost like an argument. I'm like, no, I actually enjoy this. Like, I remember when I had my company, you know, and we had, you know, 15 or 20 people and the sink could fill it up. And I mean, I was never the person who is the president doesn't do dishes. No, of course, you know, like I'd be like, leave me alone. This is my time to think. And there's something about having your hands in soapy water. So that is a ritual for me.
That's a new one. I don't think anyone's ever shared that.
It's just a place where I actually am really sort of mindful and thoughtful, you know, because doing dishes is pretty easy. So it's not like you have to focus that much on exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like I'll hop on the motorcycle occasionally and ride, but that's such a mindful experience because you're just watching and you're such a focused, you know, what's that car going to do and what's that guy going to do. It's not a good place to let your mind wander, really.
Right.
So my mind wanders a lot more running. It wanders doing dishes. It wanders perhaps prepping dinner, something like that. I'd say those are my rituals. I can be pretty OCD, putting my left shoe on before my right shoe and things like that, you know. Those are definitely rituals.
So when you just kind of let yourself just relax and let things just flow through, and then when something hits you, like, oh, wow, okay, you get this sense of, oh, maybe, you know.
It really is. And it kind of goes back a little bit to my, you know, creative days. Is if you say, okay, now I'm going to be creative, forget it. It's not when it happens, you know. So, which reminds me, if you're on the site, I'm writing a book. So, you know, you have to be a member to read it. Sorry. But, you know, and my purpose for that is really that I'm just a regular person, but we all deserve our story. So my hope is by telling mine, other people, it's not about me, like, oh, look what Ed did, but it's like they get to say, you know what, that reminds me of when I did such and such. So check that out if you get a chance.
Awesome. And okay, so everyone can find Ed and his amazing work and his membership and the info on the 0 to 60 road trip and his book at www.JourneyTalk.community. And I thank you, Ed, very much for coming on this episode of SoulFull Sessions, and really, really excited about your journey that is opening up for you, and the space that you're holding for others in the virtual world, and soon to expand into the physical reality when the time is right.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and for you people who listen to all my 90 minutes here. It's so appreciate that. And thanks for the work you're doing, Amalia. Yeah, it just matters. you know, so
Thank you. I've
thank you
received
so
that
much.
graciously. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
All right, everyone, that wraps another episode of Soulful Sessions. Thank you so much for joining Ed Stern and myself. I will see you on the next episode of Soulful Sessions.